Welcome everyone. Today I'll be sharing the results of my experimental journey to learn German from scratch using only AI tutors. I'll be discussing AI tutor ecosystem, experiment implementation, methodology, challenges, results, and my insights. Let's explore what happened when I spent 100 days, but actually less, with AI as my only German tutor. Let's start with a short introduction to give you some context about myself. I'm a language enthusiast and language coach. As a language learner, I spent over 1,000 hours on Italki and nearly the same amount of time on other platforms. But I see myself more as a methodology researcher and experimenter rather than just a language learner. Over the past 7 years, I have extensively experimented with second language acquisition methods across more than 20 languages. My focus is on the initial phase of language learning, from absolute beginner to achieving a conversational level. I presented my results at several international psycholinguistic symposiums in 2019, 2022, 2023. My major project, 10 languages in 1,000 days, concluded in 2021 with the development of what is now called the hyper-intensive method. I don't want to dive too deep into my previous experiments, so let's jump straight to the most recent one. The experiment started because I wanted to see if it was possible to reach a conversational level in a foreign language using only AI tutors, starting with almost no prior knowledge. I looked at this from different angles, as a learner, as a language coach, a methodologist, and experimenter. I was curious about how AI compares to human tutors. Could it be just as effective, better in some ways, worse in others? So this wasn't just about me learning German, it was about discovering whether AI could change the way we learn languages. I was also testing my own learning methods I mentioned before to see if they worked in an AI-only environment. Let me define what I mean by the conversational level. For me, reaching a conversational level means being able to hold a conversation for no less than 30 minutes with an unfamiliar native speaker without long pauses, communicating naturally without making the other person feel uncomfortable due to major mistakes, having enough vocabulary to understand and express myself clearly, even if I use simple structures. Engaging in real unscripted conversations, not just repeating memorized phrases. The conversational level is the first major milestone in my language learning methodology. So reaching a conversational level was my language goal in this experiment. I took German as my target language because my first attempt at learning it in 2018 didn't go well. I learned basic grammar rules and vocabulary, but couldn't hold even a simple 5-minute conversation. After that, I never returned to German until now. I originally planned for this experiment to last 100 days, starting on December 1st, 2024. But I reached all my goals from previous slides, you see, way sooner than expected. So I decided to finish early on January 31st, 2025. So the experiment lasted 62 days. I will tell you how it turned out further on. For now, I will show a few more slides on how the experiment was prepared and implemented. I committed using only AI platforms, no human teachers, textbooks, or traditional materials to isolate the impact of AI tutors specifically. Now the tools. I didn't just chat with any random AI. I built tutor personas, each with their own backgrounds and personalities to make interactions more engaging and realistic. This customization of the AI tutors also allowed me to give them the instructions I needed for effective lessons. And how did I track my progress? Instead of taking exams or filling out grammar worksheets, I focused on one thing: can I hold a real conversation? From the very beginning, two independent German language experts monitored my progress, assessing my development along the way. Then, at the end of the experiment, native speakers provided real-world feedbacks after having unscripted conversation with me to determine if I had truly reached a conversational level. A critical aspect of my experiment was continuous monitoring by independent German language experts. Two professional language specialists tracked my progress from the first week through the final evaluation. Lyubov Tykina is an experienced German teacher with extensive classroom experience, and Stefania Chernova is a polyglot, bilingual linguist with native German language, and language coach as me. Both experts followed my Telegram channel, where I kept a diary of the experiment, allowing them to observe my progress in real time. Additionally, I had several online sessions with each of them at the beginning, midway, and at the end of the experiment. During those sessions, they spontaneously started speaking German to me. These natural conversations helped them assess my progress at different stages. My first meeting with Lyubov took place a week after I started, you see in slide, followed by two sessions in early January with Lyubov and Steffi, and two final sessions after the experiment concluded. Both experts also received audio recordings of my conversations with native speakers at the end of the experiment. Using all this information, each of them provided me with feedback. Let me introduce my methodology I used in my experiment. I'll briefly touch on only some key elements. Hyper-intensive immersion means that I organize waves of intensity when, for a short time, I do immersion in conversational practice for about 10-14 days, and every day I have usually 3 or even more hours of lessons, sometimes 5 hours or maybe 10 hours even. Then I pause for a while. You can read more about the waves of intensity I have developed in this paper by Professor Dina Borisovna Nikulicheva. Dr. Nikulicheva is a renowned linguistics professor. She has been monitoring my experiments for almost 5 years, and she is the author of 2 excellent books on polyglot strategies written in Russian. The next important principle is the student-led lesson approach. This means that I do not expect the tutors to teach me, but rather to follow my plan and behave as a language sparring partner. By the way, Professor Dina Borisovna Nikulicheva herself also experienced my methodology and wrote a paper about her experience. You could read it at this link shown in the slide. So about AI platforms I used. So I used multiple AI platforms, including ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Claude, and 11 labs, each with different capabilities and limitations. I also tested the Gliglish app to explore how a pre-configured language learning service could help complete beginners to develop conversational skills. For speaking and listening practice, I relied heavily on 11 Labs, which offered flexible voice agent customization and superior voice library compared to other platforms. To implement my methodology, and achieve all of my goals I mentioned in the first slides, I decided to create not just one AI tutors, but a AI tutor ecosystem, an entire network of personas. Each of AI tutor had a complete biography and professional background. This deep personalization allowed me to engage in more meaningful and dynamic conversations. I designed detailed prompts instructing the AI tutors to appropriate difficulty levels, conversation topics, and correction methods. And I created full documentation packages, including custom system prompts for each tutor, instructions, and a shared knowledge base with lesson plan and guiding principles. In the screenshot on the slide, you can see the documentation package for one of my AI tutors. It includes more than 10 files. It's not the biggest example. I split AI tutors into two groups. Academic AI tutors, they introduced me to advanced vocabulary and pushed me to have more challenging conversations. And casual AI tutors, these were more like language partners. Their goal was to make conversations feel natural and spontaneous, just like chatting with friends. The development of AI tutor proceeded in two steps. First, I built AI developer assistants. They helped me to create others. So the second step was AI developers fulfilled my tasks of creating AI tutors based on detailed templates. And in total, I created about 40 different personas. I had to experiment a lot with different versions of tutors with my AI developers. This took me more time than I had expected before I started the experiment. Creating one AI tutor could take sometimes a day or two at first, but then the process started to speed up. Though this experimentation, I learned how to create effective and consistent AI tutors so they could follow their role during the lesson, and not only the lesson, but the role lessons. And my main persona was Sophie Muller, a fictional architect from Berlin. I started with written chat lessons with her, then transitioned to voice-based interactions to improve my speaking skills. Now let's take a look at how the experiment proceeded. I tracked all my learning activities throughout the 2 months period. I systematically tracked all interactions. It was part of my research approach. I wanted objective data on time investment. Each interaction with AI tutor had specific goals, targeted practice areas, and measurable outcomes. The data shows I spent a total of 131 hours learning German during this 2 months period. And you can see clearly these intensive waves in my learning schedule. Week 50 was particularly intensive with over 45 hours, averaging 6.5 hours per day. And this slide demonstrates the waves of intensity. And this slide shows, as you can see, 52 hours were dedicated specifically to conversational practice. Here again are two waves of intensity where I immersed into voice interaction with AI tutors. Here you can see the hours of oral and non-oral practice distribution altogether, and on which days my sessions with independent experts took place when I tried spontaneous conversations with them in German. You see, my first attempt to speak German with Lubov was after 1 week I started, and then in week 2, at the beginning of January, I had 2 more sessions with Lubov and Steffi, and in week 5, I had my first conversation with a native German speaker. Conversations with independent experts lasted from in German 5 to 15 minutes at most. The conversation with Ian, it was my first native German speaker, lasted about 40 minutes. For the first 2 weeks, you can see I did text-only chat lessons with AI tutors. During this period, I accumulated a small number of basic words, but my conversational skills were extremely low. At my first meeting with the expert, I could only exchange the simplest sentences with great difficulty. You could see in slide how many hours I had at the moment of the first attempt, about 22 hours of written conversations. After 2 weeks, at this point, I decided it was time to switch to oral conversational practice if I want to end my experiment speaking with native speakers. Here I encountered a problem. AI platforms at that moment, about 3 months ago, had significant limitations on voice tokens, making it impossible to conduct a full lesson. So lessons with apps like Gliglish also left much to be desired. Since it was impossible to customize the tutors, I could only use pre-installed AI tutors, and lessons with them did not allow me to progress quickly. Despite many attempts, I spent the rest of the first month without noticeable progress in my conversational skills. Luckily, at the end of 2024, the 11 Labs platform made it possible to create voice-customized AI agent, like in text-based platforms. In early 2025, I had 2 more meetings with experts, but my conversational skills had not improved much compared to the first time. And after these meetings, I created a whole series of new AI tutors specialized only for the oral lesson format. And you can see the large set of hours during this period in the graph. This was my second intensive wave of speaking practice only. Toward the end of the month, I realized, it was about the end of January, I could already hold about 30-minute conversation with AI tutors. And it was time to try talking to native speakers as well. So let me show you a quick video example of one of my conversation with AI tutors. Please provide a video.
Привет, Елена.
Guten Tag, ich bin Dr. Elena Webertchen aus München. Ich habe bemerkt, dass Sie Ihre deutsche Sprachreise mit Ihrer eigenen Methode beginnen, was ich sowohl aus technischer als auch aus kultureller Perspektive faszinierend finde. Ich freue mich darauf, Ihre Konversationspraxis auf die für Sie beste Weise zu unterstützen. Wie möchten Sie die heutige Stunde gestalten?
Hallo, Elena. Es freut mich auch, Sie kennenzulernen. Und heute möchte ich eine Unterrichtsstunde im Stil von Smalltalk organisieren und über einfache Themen wie Sprachlernen, Reisen, Arbeit sprechen.
Das klingt nach einem wunderbaren Plan. Wir können mit einem einfachen Thema beginnen und dann Schritt für Schritt fortfahren. Möchten Sie mit dem Thema Sprachenlernen beginnen oder haben Sie eine andere Präferenz für den Start?
Heute, ich möchte nicht Schritt für Schritt üben, aber ich möchte mit Ihnen eine Konversation im Stil von Smalltalk organisieren.
Let's return to my presentation. You can see from this video example how I interact with my AI tutors on 11 Labs platform. So for the first moment, I was needed to activate my tutor. So I need to say a activation command, and then they upload all the instructions and then start to speak with me, knowing already about me and some basic information. It's just community tutors behave on italki. What happened next? It was this most important day on my experiment on January 31st. On the 62nd day of experiment, I arranged 45-minute conversations with 6 different unfamiliar native German speakers through italki. None of them knew I had been learning exclusively with tutors until after our conversation. Each conversation was unstructured and covered various topics from casual chat to complex discussions about my experiment. All conversations started and went completely spontaneous for me. From the very first minute, I started talking in German without switching to English. And so it was the first time in my life I spoke to native German speakers and for 4 hours in total in one day. And after the first conversation with Ian, here you see, I realized I had a pretty good conversation. And the rest of the conversations confirmed my impression. So each of these conversations lasted about 40 minutes, and in German. At the end, my interlocutors gave me feedback in English. One of them left her feedback also on my italki profile, you could see. And here you could see all these native speakers gave roughly the same feedback. Of course, you couldn't read all of them right now, but maybe after the presentation you could read with pausing. But according to their assessment, my German level in these conversations was about B1 or so. They were quite impressed when they found out that I had only been learning the language for 2 months, and even more so when they found out that this was the first day I was having conversation with native speakers. And after my conversation day, I provided audio recordings of the lessons to my independent experts, whose evaluations were similar to feedbacks from native speakers. I also had a spontaneous conversation with Lubov Pekina during our final meeting, and she included her impressions in her assessment. These feedbacks, along with my own impressions, made me realize that I had reached the conversational level I described earlier, holding a 30 minutes conversation with native speakers, communicating naturally without making the other person feel uncomfortable, and so on. After I finished my experiment, I did a complex linguistic analysis of all conversations with independent experts, and the very first conversation with a native speaker. To perform this analysis, I also created an AI assistant analyst who prepared this table for me. As you see, I started with just 61 unique words in my first conversation with Lyubov. After 1 week, I started an experiment, and I used a lot filler words like ah. So my speaking fluency shows how much I said filler words. But at the end, when I have a conversation with Ian, the amount of filler words were decreased. So it means my fluency speed up. And syntactic complexity. At first, I used simple sentences like "I like coffee," but at the end, I was connecting multiple ideas in one or sentences. So about grammatical accuracy, in my first attempt, accuracy was quite high, about 19%, but my sentence structure was very simple. But at the end, my accuracy, grammatical accuracy, was not so high, but the complex, I use more complex structure. And this AI analyst also has this evaluation of my level like B1. Graph illustrates the progress of the grammatical aspects. So my grammatical variety. I started with essentially 2 free sentence patterns using almost entirely present tense verb. And by the end, I was using 9+ distinct patterns, including all 4 German cases, perfect and past tenses, subjunctive forms, and even past voice constructions. So this graph shows all the progress in from the grammar perspective. On this graph, you can see the progress of vocabulary development expressed in lemmas, the basic form of words. The data of the 4th attempt at the end is smaller because the duration of the conversation with the expert was shorter, only about 10 minutes. Let's go to the conclusion. In this slide, I collected all of my takeaways from my experiment, and I share what I learned about tutors during my German language experiment. I'm not going to read all of them, but the pros seem more or less obvious. So let me highlight a few unexpected difficulties I encountered. The first is the so-called uncanny valley effect, and I only found out later what it was called. But during the experiment, I encountered strong psychological resistance and even rejection to conducting lessons with AI tutors. This was not noticeable in the first weeks of the experiment. I think that the effect builds up gradually with regular and intensive communication with them. In short, despite the fact that they behave almost like humans, I experienced a persistent feeling of emotional emptiness. So it was uncanny valley effect. So take it into your account if you will have classes with AI tutors. Next finding, when you schedule a class with a human tutor, it creates social responsibility and expectations. It may be difficult to cancel a lesson at the last minute without a valid reason. But with AI tutors, you have to rely only on your own self-discipline, which not everyone is okay with. One more takeaway. For unsophisticated beginners, which is the majority, it would be problematic to organize good quality lessons with AI tutors on their own, I think. To conclude, my experiment answered the main research question. Yes, it is possible to achieve a conversational level in a new language using only AI tutors, even starting from zero or almost zero, at least for German. However, as I discussed earlier, there were challenges along the way. This experiment represents just the beginning of the understanding AI's roles in language acquisition. AI tutors are a great tool, especially for independent learners with clear goals. However, they can't fully replace humans' interactions, especially for emotional and social aspects of learning. So thank you all for your attention, and now I'm happy to take any questions. So I see in our chat box there are some questions from Vanessa. First question, what elements of human interaction do think cannot be replaced by AI? As I said, this emotional feedback, I think it's a crucial element. And also AI tutors couldn't follow easily the level of student. So they should be very strict instructed because there is a hallucination with AI, and they couldn't understand what is your level about in the middle of a lesson. So this is a little problem. And they couldn't switch easily from one language to another if you use two languages, for example, one language for meta communication. Second question. Hello, very interesting. Can you tell us if you worked with free AI tutors or if you had to pay for your lessons? You may have said so, but I don't understand English perfectly. So I used only paid account in AI platforms. In ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and the Claude. So in 11 Labs also. So if we're talking about costs, it would be a little bit cheaper to have classes with AI tutors. But if you want to have a good quality classes on 11 Labs, it would be about just twice or three times cheaper than with regular italki tutor. Not completely cheap, so free. Of course, there are many apps for learning language with AI, with almost free or 10 or 20 euro or dollars for months. But as I said earlier, they were pre-installed and you couldn't customize your AI tutor for your goals. So you showed yourself using over 300 lemmas by the end. Were they generally across subjects, or did you get skilled in a few key subjects? Yes, of course. During these 2 months, I was trying to collect words to be prepared for a small talk conversation. So I couldn't know how exactly my conversations with my native speakers would be, because it was just part of my experiment to hold spontaneous conversations without telling them before the class what I want to talk about. But just to collect words and practice unscripted conversations, I have classes with my AI tutors about small talk topics. Hobbies, work, language learning, because it's my hobby, and my job also, about language experiments I made earlier. So I imagined myself what I would be talk about if I met a unfamiliar native speaker. So this way I organized my lesson, and from this way I collected, as you see, about 300 or maybe more, about 400 lemmas, but in total about 500 words. So there is a difference between lemmas and words. Because lemma is just basic form of many words. So this was my tactic to collect this amount of words to be prepared for unscripted conversation. So next question from Celine. Did you check the availability of other languages? Usually for voice AI, only main languages, English and Spanish, are well pronounced and make sense. The rest is gibberish. Yes, it depends of the platform. For example, in 11 Labs, there are only 12 or 20 languages available. There is no voice for others. On ChatGPT, there are a lot, maybe 100, but actually I didn't test it all of them. I tried to speak Catalan. It's not very common language in AI platforms, but they could speak well, yes. So it would be maybe my next experiments with not very wide range languages to test platforms. So, and you also could to try some of them. A question from John. Do you see a big shift to using AI tutors of the humans tutors in the near or distant future? It's a big question. I don't think so. Of course, even at the end of this year, we will see a big progress of AI and also in voice interactions, because voice interaction is a main way of progress, because they want us to speak with AI, not just to text with them. So these platforms, and maybe the cost will be decreasing to have lessons with them. But as I see, there is a big problem. I didn't know about this problem about uncanny valley effect. I was expected with my conversation with AI tutors will be very nice, but they were nice, but there is no emotional feedback. And for example, you speak with someone and you speak emotionally, engaging a lot, but there is no answer, there is no feedback from this person. What do you feel? So this way from AI tutors, they just imitate emotions perfectly, yes. But after the lesson, I realized just a mirage. So there is no, it's not a real. I was trying to communicate for nothing. So this is a feeling was very strong. So I think it was main difficult I faced on this experiment. I think we could study this effect deeply because now we have an alternative with whom to have a lesson, with human tutors or with AI. And I think it would be studied from a psycholinguistics point of view. So next question: how did you learn vocabulary? Did the AI chatbot also provided translations? In 11 Labs, when you speak with AI tutors, there is a problem really for beginners. You couldn't see chat, so you just speak, and there is no chat near to see the communication. It's a good from one perspective, so you need to to be able to speak, but it's not good for beginners because they need support from text. So about learning vocabulary, as I said, from my approach, I didn't learn vocabulary from lists. So I didn't use cards for learning languages, for words. So I had a lot of organized lessons, and I take my vocabulary through the context of speaking. So this is my approach. You spoke about having to monitor and continually train the agent. Can you talk a little about what that look like? How did you go with about it? Yes, it was a main part of my activities during these 2 months. A part of language learning, I was dedicated as much hours to creating AI tutors. So as I said, firstly, I created AI developers, special assistants. With help of them, I created others, actually AI tutors. So it was fun. It was interesting part of my experiment, communicating with AI tutors to create others. So for the first time, the AI tutors didn't function very well. They couldn't follow their role and instructions. So that's why I needed a lot of version to develop AI tutors. And all of this work I made with AI developers. So at the first stage, I was needed to understand how to communicate with AI developers and how to develop AI developers. So, but it's a long story. Maybe next time I will tell you more. So we have a couple of questions. Given the various disadvantages and considering the environmental implications, for example, enormous amount of water used, would it be better not to promote AI use and seek to human tutors? Yes, of course. Why not? As I said, now we have 2 alternatives. You could, if you know how to develop AI tutors, it would not be a problem to have as good lessons as with human tutors, if we not mention the emotional part of the communication. But if you're not sophisticated much how to interact with AI tutors, how to develop them, how to organize lessons with them, I think it's still good idea to learn languages with human tutors, or maybe combine them. I want to make another experiment when I will combine 2 alternatives altogether, AI tutors and human tutors. So it would be a very interesting experiment, I think. So question from Sonia: have you experienced any AI hallucinations that you were aware of? A lot, yes, a lot. But in my experiment, the hallucination problem is good news, because I want them to hallucinate during the lessons, because I want them to play a role. For example, as I said, Sophia Müller, an architect. So I couldn't write every single detail about her biography, but this AI tutor created genuinely her biography and some past experience. So in this for this task, hallucinations is a good news, because for me it's not a big deal. They speak truly about herself. I could say more that in my instructions, there is one point: not behave as a AI tutors, behave as a human tutor. Forgot completely your AI nature. So, and then they couldn't follow these instructions to forget completely AI nature. This was for me bad news, because they couldn't follow their role easily in my instruction, and they couldn't give me a real experience, or quasi-real experience. So, okay, thank you, all of them, and good luck with language learning with AI or human tutors.